This podcast contains adult language and stories of true crime. If you don't like laughing, crying, or being horrified at the actions of other humans, this podcast is not for you.
Welcome to Resolved Mysteries. Oh, welcome to Season 4, Episode 24, Part 1 of Resolved Mysteries.
Welcome.
This is, right? Is it good? Am I doing good?
Yeah, it's just funny that we still don't know how to do this.
Yeah, I know. It's been like 100 years. This is the show where we rewatch, recap, and give you the latest updates to the cases featured on the show Unsolved Mysteries. And I'm Allison.
I'm Eliza.
And I'm Karlin.
And welcome to the show. We're so happy you're here. So, as most of you know, for every review we receive, we donate $1 to a different organization. And this month's organization is the Parent Project Muscular Dystrophy. By Felicia92 says, I think you should donate to Parent Project Muscular Dystrophy. They are trying to find a cure for Duchenne muscular dystrophy. They were extremely helpful when my son was diagnosed earlier last year.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Who wants to shout out some patrons?
I can do it. All right. Thank you to Annie V, Allison W, Norminka G, Carolyn T, or Caroline. Sorry, you get that all the time, I know. Cinnamon B, Caitlin W, Caitlin S, Laura K, Chanel K, Shannon K.
Okay.
Okay. Rachel R, Rebecca L, Valerie C, and Christina L. Thank you.
Thank you
so much.
I want to shout out Lara K because she has been my friend since middle school.
Oh.
But hi, Lara, and you're the best.
Thanks, Lara.
Thanks, Lara, and other patrons. Okay, so.
Oh, boy.
Here
we go.
So, once upon a time when this podcast started 1,000,000 years ago, I thought it would be cute if you guys could pick our poison.
It is cute.
It's adorable, but we've had a tough go, right? The Malort, specifically. So our honey, Thomas G., who lives in New York City and is a doll, wrote to us and he said, I first want to say that I am loving that this is becoming a regular thing. After the trial and tribulation of the tequila, about which I have my own horror stories, and the shudder Malort, I thought I'd pick something pleasant and seasonal with at least a tenuous connection to the show. I was inspired both by the fact that Valentine's Day, my favorite chocolate-themed holiday, is just around the corner. So this was a bit ago. And by the Nebraska episode of the 50 States of the Unsolved series on Patreon. Though I hope this creates a more positive association with the liqueur in question. What happened in Nebraska?
That one, so what I remember is someone was tied to a tree, they were burned, and there was a bottle of schnapps, peppermint schnapps at their
Eliza
feet.
covered that.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
So this is a
Good job,
I don't remember
Karlin.
what the case is called, but I remember
This is
Neither do
a
I.
better association for sure. So Thomas says, to that end, the poison I'm picking is the peppermint patty, consisting of 1 part peppermint schnapps. The higher the proof, the better. I see you. And I followed instructions. 1 part cream cacao, 1 part cream de cocoa, and 2 parts white chocolate liqueur, Sheelan, Godiva, Brugada, etc., or Irish cream. Simply stir the ingredients together in a glass, chill if you like, and serve. I hope you enjoy it and keep up the amazing work. All right, so I do want to say that I want to give a shout out. My local liquor store, which you would think I would know the guy, but I didn't. But he was really nice, and I told him what I needed. So he gave us a bottle of Spiritopia peppermint liqueur, which is actually made here in Oregon. Super cool. And then instead of,
smells so
I
good.
said, do you just have Bailey's? And he's like, I have something better, and it costs less. And I was like, well, thank you. So this is also from Oregon. It's called 5 Farms, and it's a single batch Irish cream liqueur.
Can I see that
Yeah,
bottle?
it's gorgeous.
Oh, my
Oh,
gosh.
it's so cool. I was like, I'll buy it for the packaging. I'm a sucker for packaging.
That is Gorgina.
Wow.
And then for the cream de cocoa, we just looked at each other, and we were both like, de kipper. He's like, that's all I've got. And he said, it's a good investment, though, because it costs $9 and it lasts forever. So
Love it.
anyway, So we're going to drink this amazing cocktail. Eliza and I have already tried it, but Karlin has not. So
We had some eager beavers over here who
Well,
came
we
back
are-
smacking their lips. And I was like, wait, did you just drink it?
I could not. It was so good.
Karlin said, did
I'm
you just drink
now.
it? And Eliza and I both said, yeah.
I was like,
Didn't
okay,
even
well,
try to
fuck my
hide
drag.
I do have to say I filled mine with ice, though, to water it down because it is very sweet.
I put ice just to chill it up.
Oh, it's good. I love it.
This is a dangerous situation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because it all has alcohol in it. There's
I
no
know, but it
nothing-
tastes like there's none.
I want to drink this at Christmas time.
Me too.
Right. Or Valentine's Day, like Thomas suggested.
You know who else wants to drink this is Jamie, for sure.
Yes, my husband would love this drink. Maybe I'll give him the rest of this. He's putting in some work today, so.
He deserves it.
Should we mention what Jamie is doing today? Jamie is single-handedly wrangling my daughter and Eliza's daughter to a theater class that he absolutely loathes
Doesn't believe in.
taking them to. And I
Because
just,
it's in a Lake Oswego, which who wants to drive there? I'm sorry, Lake Oswego listeners, but
you're far. And no one in Lake Oswego
they're
listens to us.
specifically Lake Oswego listeners.
You're too far away, you rich bitches.
Yeah, really.
You're rich.
So Jamie does listen to this podcast, and I want to say thank you.
We love you, Jamie.
And we love you.
We love
And appreciate you.
And yeah.
Okay,
We do, and we'll make you a peppermint pie.
we will. Okay. So
Thank you, Thomas.
thank you, Thomas.
I'm drunk and sick already.
Yeah, we're already wasted.
Already thinking about my future barf.
And my cavities. Yikes. So sweet.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
Sisters.
Oh, boy.
What are we covering this episode?
Oh, my loves. I mean, it is so sad what I have to tell you about, which is a PsyMed case, which is not usually that sad, but this one is very sad
is.
about the Santos family.
Yeah.
Yep, and then the second segment is an unexplained death about Kathy Bonderson.
And then in part 2, question mark, what should I do here?
Yeah, you can say in part 2.
For sure.
There's
It
a
will for
question
sure.
mark for some reason.
But it will for sure be 2 parts.
Oh, I didn't. Did I make
I think that's left over from before. From last episode. We must read everything on the script.
You're like-
I love to read all of the punctuation.
You're like Ron Burgundy.
Okay.
We referenced that exact joke this morning, me and Jared.
Oh, really? Okay, in part 2, I'm covering a robbery case about the Vallejo armored car murders.
I wrap it up with an amnesia case about Sarah DeJaneiro. And you guys, I don't want to spoil it, but I think it's legit.
Oh my God. I can't wait.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, let's do it. All right, so this is, like I said, the PsyMed case about the Santos family. So the Santos family lived on the American territory of Guam, 3,000 miles west of the Hawaiian Islands. Shortly after midnight on December 31st, 1960, Donatilla and her 34-year-old husband, Francisco, who is so cute. We will post a picture. He is adorable. Were sound asleep in their Milpitas home. At about 1:30 a.m., she woke up to the sound of him snoring, and this was really strange because he never snored. And there is a reenactment of this, and it is very, very sad. She's like, hey, you're snoring, and tries to wake him up. And when you just really quickly know something is not right, and you can tell that's what happened. And so she's like, then really frantic right away, crying, shaking him, but he still would not wake up. And then she says she lifted him up and leaned him against her, and all of a sudden he just took his last breath, and then he was gone. And just 4 days before that, he had undergone a routine physical exam, and he was found to be in excellent health. So Francisco's death was initially attributed to a stroke, but was later determined to be the result of heart failure. So Donatilla was left to raise 7 young children by herself.
God.
And this is sad enough as it is, but it gets so much more sad.
I know. And like at this point in the segment, I'm like, wait, where is this going?
Yeah,
You know?
you couldn't imagine. So Stack says, today Donatilla lives in Yuba City, California. She hopes that by presenting her story, someone will be able to help identify this deadly affliction, which has plagued the Santos family for 3 generations. So then you're like, oh no.
But then wasn't part of you wondering if it was like a murder situation?
No, because it was.
I guess because
yes,
we know it
I
was
guess I
assignment.
did wonder if she was. For a second I thought maybe it's poisoning, but then with her interview, I feel like I could quickly tell she's not making it up. But
Yeah. I didn't know this segment. I wasn't paying attention to the segment type.
Right,
So I was
right,
like,
right.
oh no, is this a poisoner? But then I was like,
Right.
she seems so nice.
Oh, she's a honey. So 10 years after Francisco dies, by 1970, Donatilla has remarried and she's moved with her children to Northern California and her new husband. And then on April 17th, 1981, so 21 years after her first husband has died, the Santos family experienced another tragedy. 27-year-old Doris, who's the youngest daughter, was found unconscious in her bedroom in Santa Clara.
Oh, my God.
According to her brother Steve, who is a talking head in the segment, she was half on, half off the bed, like when he walked by the room and looked in. And he's so sweet because he's like, oh, my sister's probably not comfortable like that. And he goes in to like put her back on the bed and cover her all up and realizes that she has died.
Oh, my God.
Or that at least he can't wake her. So he runs to his mom's room and tells her about Doris, and Donatilla also tries to wake her, but she can't. So she told Steve to call the paramedics and the priest. They're a very religious family. But it was too late, and doctors determined that Doris had died of acute congestive heart failure, which they felt was from the ventricles' inability to pump sufficient amounts of blood to the body.
Wow.
And they did not connect her death to the condition that killed her father.
Right. I mean, why would you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's this poor mother. Oh my God. So within 2 years of Doris's death, 23-year-old Ronnie, who was the baby of the family, began experiencing chest pains. At the time, he was engaged to his high school sweetheart, Dana Novotny. And he goes into the doctor and they're like, oh, you just have a virus of your heart muscle, which can be controlled by medication. And Dana's on there, and she's like, I was scared about his condition, but the doctor said he would be fine with medication. He's in good care. And the family, including her, sorry, it might be Dana. It might be Dana or Dana. I guess you normally say that, Dana, don't you? So Dana did not believe, and the family didn't, that it was related to Doris or Francisco's deaths, as they were thought to be different issues from each other. And then Ronnie has a virus of the heart, which is different than what they died from. And
like by the third person,
I know.
you?
I know. But then Dana is also like, Dana says, at that point, I actually thought his father had died of a stroke, so I wasn't thinking heart at all.
Right.
Wow. Okay.
So,
Yeah, like something happening with your heart can make a number of other things happen.
Right.
Too. So it's
Right.
Yeah.
So by the following September, I'm like, at this point, oh, great. He's fine. It's okay. No. By the following September, Ronnie and Dana are married, and under a doctor's supervision, Ronnie had been living a normal, active life, which included weekly games of softball. So during one game on June 25th, 1984, Dana came to watch with a friend at a field in Sunnyvale. And after the first half of the inning was over, Ronnie and his teammates, who had been out in the field, came in. According to Dana, there hadn't been much action. It wasn't like Ronnie had been running around much or anything. And he's standing by the backstop, sort of leaning on a bat, talking to friends, and suddenly he just collapses and falls to the ground.
Oh, my God.
So Dana immediately runs to him. He's like groaning and moaning, but they are not sure what's wrong. And then he goes unconscious and never regains consciousness.
Oh, my God. Can you imagine?
No. Also, it's not cell phone time. You can't just be like, call 911.
No, right.
Someone has to run to the nearest house to do that. So he is pronounced dead upon arrival to the hospital.
Jesus.
And he was only 24 years old. So now Donatilla has lost 2 of her children and her first husband. And the cause of death for Ronnie was cardiomyopathy and irregular heartbeat, which was probably the result of a viral infection, which they had said he had the previous year. So poor Dana is a widow in her mid-20s. Like, and she says he had his whole life to live. Like, I feel like it was truly one of those cases of you do not believe anything terrible can happen to you in your 20s.
No.
Or to the people that you
not
love.
A heart problem.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So, a year later, the eldest son of the family, 33-year-old Frank Sr., collapsed while sitting at his home watching television on June 11th, 1985. At the time, this is so sad. Oh, my God. His wife, Annette, and his mother, Donatilla, are together running errands. And they receive a phone call, and Donatilla answers. And by the way they made it sound, they had a car phone or something. Like,
yeah, like they were on the move and they got the
right.
phone call.
Which I'm just now realizing. But Donatilla receives the phone call, and she gets off the phone quickly, and Annette describes her as very panicked. And Donatilla just says, "We have to go. Something is wrong with Frank." So Annette, Frank's wife, and Donatilla drove back to the house, and Donatilla is just praying the whole time. And as they approached the house, Annette saw a paramedics truck, and she knew something was wrong. They ran into the house and stopped in the dining room, and they looked into the living room and saw the paramedics working on Frank, and Annette says she just knew that he was gone.
Oh, my God.
And so Donatilla lost her 3rd child.
Jesus.
And they're, oh my God, it couldn't be worse. It's so horrible.
And they're so young. Is it?
Yes,
It
that's
seems
so
like
that's
it's
what
around the
Stack
same
says.
age.
Yes, so Stack says Francisco Santos, the father who died 25 years before.
Right.
So he was so young when he died. All the kids were very young.
Right.
And then 3 of his children, they all died before reaching the age of 35.
Wow.
So by this time, physicians are trying to search for answers to figure out what is happening, because this is starting to get really
Now
weird.
It's like
Something's going
undeniably
on.
These are
Right.
most likely
A
connected.
familial thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was discovered that Francisco's side of the family had been plagued by different heart disorder diagnoses for a number of generations. And actually, 4 of Francisco's brothers had died of heart failure, 2 of them while they were in their 30s.
I'm wondering if, I guess they were also going to see different doctors, right? Like they lived in Guam,
Yes.
then they moved
Yes.
to
Yes.
California. So there's no cross communication. Otherwise,
No.
obviously there would have been a pattern.
And most likely when Francisco died, either he had already had some of his brothers die, or so it's also 50s and 60s.
Right.
Like medicine was so different
Right.
then.
Yeah.
And education. So Frank, the oldest son, his death was also attributed to cardiomyopathy, but doctors weren't unable to identify the specific disease that is happening, obviously, in this family.
Right.
And then Frank is not the last one who dies. So on August 7th, 1987, another one of the brothers, 30-year-old Ralph, fell asleep on the sofa at his home in San Jose, and he just never woke up.
What?
And he left behind a wife and 2 young sons.
What a nightmare.
And his death was also attributed to a viral infection of the heart. And it's like, again, that's all the doctors really know about.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like,
That's all they can say.
yeah. And so they're all so sad, but this is the saddest one, I feel. So on November 15th, 1991, when I realized who this was, it was so awful. 15-year-old Frank Jr.,
Yeah.
who is Annette and Frank Sr.'s son. So Annette has already lost her husband, and he has lost his dad.
Yeah.
Frank, who they called Sonny Santos Jr., was at a high school homecoming dance in Santa Clara, and he just collapses. He's 15. And so now the family's realizing whatever's going on has skipped now to the next generation.
I want to cry. That's
And now
so
Annette has lost her
upsetting.
son
Yeah.
and her husband.
And then it's kind of like, as a member of that family, as a kid in that family, are you you
Yes.
must be in fear constantly.
They are. One of the family members says
One
that,
of the
but yeah, I was
surviving
thinking
brothers,
that the
yeah.
whole time too. Like, you must just think I'm gonna be next.
Yeah.
And so Annette has the exact same experience that she had with her husband, where she gets a call. She walks into the school gym. She sees paramedics working on her son. And again, she just knows he's gone.
Oh, my God.
So he is buried right next to his Uncle Ronnie, and nearby are the graves of his father, his Aunt Doris, and his Uncle Ralph. And obviously his grandfather is buried in Guam. So then it's Steve that you were talking about, Karlin, because he is the only surviving son of Donatilla and Francisco. So Steve is like, I feel like I'm a ticking time bomb. And like, am I going to be the next one to die? But also, he has a young baby. He's just, his wife has just
and he's
had.
probably thinking, have I passed this on to my
Right.
Yes, of course, because now it's passed on to his nephew who's in the same generation.
Right.
It's hell. This is a living hell, especially without a diagnosis.
Right.
Yes.
So there's a doctor on there, and they feel like obviously there's something in this family's genetic code, but the education or technology or whatever is just not there yet for them to figure out what it is. But he says it's a very unusual situation, and he hasn't been able to find any other families that have had this same thing happen. So despite all the years of pain and hardship, which is now going on 30 years for Donatilla especially, but also the kids who lost their father and almost all their siblings.
And the spouses. Imagine marrying into the family.
No.
You marry into it, and you had no idea.
And you have no idea, and now you have born a child who is probably afflicted.
Right.
So they are resilient. They're like this beautiful family. They really like work together. They still do family reunions with the family that's left. So this is when Steve is like, I have a 3-month-old daughter, and I want to find out what this is so that I can help her.
Yeah.
He's kind of gone past, am I going to die? It's like, I have someone else now that I'm responsible for. And he's literally watched 6 of his family members die.
Yeah.
So Donatilla says that she thinks about her children and grandchildren every day and worries about what might happen to them. And she says she just hopes and prays they will not die and that this will stop. So the segment ends with, obviously, which this is also just so crazy. Like, the reason they're on this show is so that someone will just come forward, a doctor or a family will come forward and say, this same thing happened to my family, or I'm a doctor and I treated a family that had this, because there's no internet. Like, it's just such a different time.
I mean, it was like,
and obviously whatever's going on is rare. Yes.
It's like the original crowdsourcing.
Yeah. For a deadly illness.
Yeah.
So there is good news after all the horror. But after the broadcast, several viewers called the telecenter, and they were like, I think that this family has what's called Brugada Syndrome. What's interesting about this is that it's really rare. It's a genetic disorder, and it's most commonly seen in Asian people.
Okay.
Thailand and Laos or Laotian people it's really common in Thai people. And then this family is from Guam. So it causes just sudden cardiac death from heart arrhythmia.
That is terrifying.
It is horrible, and often there will be no other symptoms. So it's actually kind of surprising that Ronnie, who had heart issues before, even had that happen. Right. Usually it's like all the other ones where you just die.
Well, yeah, that one person had just had a physical. Everything was fine.
The father,
and maybe he had another heart issue.
Right.
Those two things, like, they're not.
Right.
So it could have been that he already had a heart issue, and that's why they were like, well, this is what you have. We'll put you on medication. You'll be fine.
Right. And then, so I looked at a little more about it, and about a quarter of people with Brugada Syndrome also have a family member who have it. So it's like highly passed on in genetic pools.
Wow.
But the good news is that with this, all these people calling in, doctors were able to test the family, and it confirmed that they all do have Brugada syndrome. Mm-hmm. Obviously not the wives or husbands, and not Donatilla, because it was carried on from Francisco's side.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So Frank Sr., who died and whose son died, Annette still had one surviving son left, whose name was Roque, I think, and he is put on a pacemaker, so like his life is probably saved. And then remaining relatives who also had Brugada syndrome were put on a daily heart medication.
Wow.
And as far as I could find, nobody else has died in the family since getting this diagnosis, and basically since the airing of the segment.
Wow. This was not what I expected at all.
They called it PsyMed, which usually is like really dumb. So
totally. And not real or something.
And not real.
Yeah.
I was just so impressed with like even the thought to crowdsource something like this.
Me too.
I did.
I'm so grateful that what if the show hadn't accepted them as applying?
Totally.
And they could have easily not. They could have said, well, you guys have heart problems. Full stop.
Yes. And I thought, like, if this one's solved, it's just going to be, like, the passing of time and, like, us having more medical knowledge. I did not expect it to be solved with viewer tips.
Me neither.
And then it's just incredible.
So when the viewers called in and said, this has happened to my family, there was already medication for it. Everybody was immediately able to address the issue.
Yeah.
I bet
the other amazing part.
I would
could have been like, we know what this is, but we don't know what to do about it.
Wow.
That's true. And I would assume treating it has changed since then.
Of course.
But whatever whatever medication they put their family members on, and then they put the son on a pacemaker, like, pacemakers are still around. And if that's the best way, they're probably still treating it that way.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's amazing. It's so amazing. And then Donatilla, who's the matriarch of the family, lived to be 83 years old and passed away in 2014. So it's so awesome because she basically was given 22 years of at least knowing that her family members are being treated for this.
That there could possibly be a solution.
Yes, because every other day since her husband, and then especially since her first child died, she had been thinking, who's next?
Yeah.
And the worst part is she probably knew it wasn't her. Like, she knew that it was from her husband's side. She's probably like, I'm not going to die from this, but I'm going to just keep watching my children and grandchildren die.
Oh, my God.
It's horrible.
The trauma of every minute of every day wondering if you're next.
I know.
Yeah.
Because I already do that. Like, I do that just from my own neuroses and my own anxiety, like constantly waiting for a horrible phone call.
Right.
But my therapist talks me down of like, but that's going to happen to everyone. And why would you spend every day like that?
Right.
Instead of just enjoying the time you have with people. But also, if you are actually given a reason to have that fear, you would have to feel that every day.
So
it's a living hell.
You can leave this in, but the beginning of this segment was super triggering for me.
Right.
Because I do on a regular basis, if I don't hear Jared making sounds, I get really scared and I like poke him because I'm afraid he's going to be dead.
Yes.
But you've also received a lot of upsetting phone calls. So,
I have been with a lot of people when they've died.
Yeah.
Right.
So.
And Karlin, your brother, has that same thing. He he constantly thinks that I am just going to die in my sleep.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So I can only imagine how it feels when 5 of your family members have died.
No. And your own fucking children. No, thank you.
And then your grandchildren, like hoping that it'll stop, like it'll end.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't.
So this is like the happiest case ending to this horrible tragedy this family went through. But
yeah.
Good on UM for having them on. And
Right.
Donatella is just a queen. I'm glad she got to live a long life. And
Yeah.
Best use of UM.
Really,
yes,
truly.
Seriously.
Right.
So that's the best SciMed I would say we've ever had.
I agreed. Yes. Oh, well, I don't know. I really loved Katie and the Gold Flakes. So
You loved that, honey. You loved it.
Yeah, like that's where my mind goes when I think of
Me
SciMed.
too. I was like,
Yes.
cool, who's going to start pooping diamonds? Like,
I wish.
My name's Brian Stratton,
And I'm Rob Milne.
and we co-host Marvel by the Month, a podcast that takes you through the history of Marvel Comics 1 month at a time. From August 1961 to whenever they decide to stop making these things.
It's like the best book club in the world, hosted by guys who thought they knew a lot more about this stuff before they started this podcast.
Look for Marvel by the Month wherever you get your podcasts or at marvelbythemonth.com.
Before Simply Earth's essential oil recipe box showed up at my door, I had a bunch of oils sitting around that I hadn't used in so long. One of the problems with oils is that I'll invest money or I'll pick something up at the store that seems like it will be good, but then I don't actually know what to use it for. And that's where Simply Earth comes in. They actually teach you how to use their oils and give you recipes to help you do that. The Simply Earth Essential Oil Recipe Box will help you gain confidence and clarity in using essential oils to make your home toxin-free. Here's how it works. You'll receive the recipe box with 4 pure essential oils, 6 recipe cards, and extras. You'll learn how to use the oils while making the recipes created by certified aromatherapists. You'll save money and start detoxifying your life and home. The best part is you're buying from a company that changes the world. Simply Earth gives 13% of all of their profits to end human trafficking. It's like a meal subscription kit, but more fun and less edible. The essential oils alone in this kit would cost over $100 from other companies, but with the Simply Earth Essential Oil Recipe Box, you get 4 oils, 6 recipes, and extras for only $39. And when you subscribe, you get a free big bonus box with even more natural goodies. But that's not all. Using essential oils to support your wellness doesn't have to be overwhelming. You can have fun making your home toxin-free with Simply Earth's Essential Oil Recipe Box, plus you'll get a free 80 milliliter essential oil diffuser when you subscribe using our URL, simplyearth.com/mysteries. That's simplyearth.com/mysteries.
Segment 2 is the case of Kathy Bonderson. What type of case is this? I didn't even put it down.
It is unexplained death.
Okay. October 25th, 1987, in the small town of New Rockford, North Dakota, which I feel like we've never had a Dakota case, an angry confrontation erupted between Kathy Bonderson and her husband over their teenage son who'd gone out without permission.
Right.
So what they show in the segment is the couple kind of like disagreeing with each other's parenting methods about the son.
Yeah.
And that's what they're yelling about. Stack tells us that it was after 2 a.m., and Kathy's husband had already searched for their son and given up, which is interesting. But in the reenactment, he's basically just kind of not worried about it. He's like, we know he's out just having fun. He'll be home when he's ready. Like, let's just wait for him to come home. So she's mad because it's 2:30 in the morning and they have no idea where he is. And the husband's like, well, then you go look for him. And she's like, fine, and storms off.
What the fuck?
Yeah, which is just a weird choice. Stack tells us that Kathy worked at a local convalescent home and had never missed a shift, but she was so worried about her son that she called work to tell them that she wasn't going to be in the next day. I'm guessing because it's already the middle of the night. She's like, I'm going to keep searching for him till I find him, so let's go ahead and call out. So the son was completely fine. He was just being a teenager and staying out late without telling his parents what he was doing. And in my research, I find out that he actually snuck out around like 8 or 9. So I understand why she was so worried. Like, he wasn't even supposed to be out of his bed. So he's actually headed home at this time that his parents are having this argument. and Kathy says she's going to go out looking for him. So he's driving home, his girlfriend's in the car with him, and he sees his mom's car pass by, which in the segment they say it's her car. In my research, it's the family car. So he also sees that there's another car kind of closely behind his mom's car, but Stack makes a point of telling us that he could not see who was driving either of the vehicles.
Right.
1 hour later, a burning car is reported on a country road near a railroad crossing. Stack tells us the car was burning so intensely that it took 15 minutes for the firefighters to be able to get the flames down enough to look inside the car. When they do, they find a body on the floorboards of the passenger side of the vehicle. Sadly, the body is later identified to be 35-year-old Kathy Bonderson. She's 35.
Wow.
By daybreak, the car was cool enough to remove Kathy's body from it. The Eddy County Sheriff at the time was Edward Almaris. So Almaris is obviously retired by the time he's doing this UM interview. He says that the firewall, the steering column, the dash, and the front seat were all completely burned, and all that was left of the car was the steel. So this car was on
incinerated.
Fire. Yeah. It was his opinion that the fire had to have started in the front of the car. Quote, there could have been a short, a pinched wire, something, because that car was doing some bending also when it went across those tracks. I couldn't figure out what he meant by that, but they put that in UM. Mm-hmm. So they show us a little graphic to explain what Almaris is trying to tell us he thinks the trajectory of the car was. So they show that Kathy's car was headed toward where he crossed the railroad tracks, like, you know, when streets go through a track. But for some unknown reason, it looked to him like Kathy had swerved off the road right before the tracks, like she was trying to avoid something. So that by time she did straighten out, she was crossing the exposed tracks rather than like normally on a road, the tracks are sunken in.
Right.
So that you can drive over them. So Almaris's theory was that it was the sudden impact of the raised tracks on the car that caused the car to burst into flames, also throwing Kathy over to the passenger side of the car.
That's not physically possible. You'd have to go up and over and all the way down.
Yeah, and he is saying she was swerving, so maybe that's part of like his theory. So basically, Almaris tells us his theory, and he's kind of like, case closed, this was a really tragic accident. Then Stack tells us it was odd that Kathy's keys were found undamaged on the floorboard of the car, even though, as we mentioned, everything in the car was completely burned or melted. Stack says that 2 days later, a new theory would emerge that, quote, would pit Sheriff Almaris against an investigator from the North Dakota State Highway Patrol. The segment is being broadcast 4 years after Kathy's death, and Stack tells us that at this time, quote, the two lawmen still disagree, and the question remains, did Kathy Bonderson die in an accident or was she murdered? So the day that the car was found burning, Captain William Byram of the Highway Patrol visited the scene to file a standard report. Byram says it was an unusual case that didn't seem to have the same characteristics that a normal accident would have. Granted, I arrived 24 hours later, but I could not distinguish any marks where the car had left the roadway. Stack explains further he didn't find any tire tracks on the road indicating that a car had veered out of control. And the tall grass around the road also appeared undisturbed. Stack says he noticed the same marks on the railroad that the sheriff had discovered, but he believed that those marks were not made by Kathy's car. He said that the marks were a reddish color, and he had talked to the firefighters that were there that night, and their hose was red. They said they had been in that same area, dragging the hose over the tracks. So by all accounts, Byram felt that the marks on the tracks were from the fire hose. And I also was like, if the marks were red, like the underside of your car isn't going to leave red marks.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So, and then this part to me was really telling. Stack says that the fuel tank still had 12.5 gallons of gas in it. Byram tells us that there was no damage whatsoever to the fuel line that went to the fuel tank from the carburetor. So you would normally conclude that if the car was in an impact that caused an explosion, there would be some sort of break or damage to the fuel tank or the fuel lines, and there were none. Fire Marshal Kurt Fogel says it appeared that the fire had started in several different areas, which is not normal to find in an accidental fire. That's like fire investigation 101, I feel like. He says there is no question in his mind that the fire was not an accident, and he doesn't explicitly say, but in later articles it does state that those spots that the fire started from were all inside the car. 3 weeks later, Captain Byram requested an exhumation of Kathy's body. Sheriff Almaris objects to this.
What the fuck?
Why?
Unless you're covering something up, why?
Why does he get to have even a say in that?
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand how that works, and I meant to kind of, like, look that up, but... So Byram threatens a court order, so Almaris, quote, backed down. He says on you know, it ticked me off when I was forced into signing the petition to exhume the body, you know. And then after we got the full wrap-up from the doctor in Minnesota, the one who performed the autopsy, he couldn't come up with any cause of death. He's just like the epitome of a curmudgeon. I do also want to mention here that I read in a couple places that there was no autopsy initially performed on Kathy's body the first time before she was buried, which I was shocked by. To me, it just seems like if you're not having one conducted, you're not doing a very thorough investigation.
100%.
So I Googled, like, when is it required to do an autopsy? So this part's from WebMD, but it said, although laws vary, nearly all states call for an autopsy when someone dies in a suspicious, unusual, or unnatural way. Many states have one done when a person dies without a doctor present. 27 states require it if the cause of death is suspected to be from a public health threat, like a disease spread or tainted food. And then on the CDC, it said... basically, like, the coroner needs to request for it to happen, and there are guidelines for when it should happen. There are specific rules if the death is of an inmate, or there was, like, a very specific part about, like, children under 1, if they're in good health and all this stuff. Or death that the coroner or acting coroner believes may have resulted from an accident, a suicide, or a homicide under suspicious circumstances. An individual who has died as a result of criminal or violent means, died suddenly when in apparent good health in a suspicious or unusual manner, or died as the result of any reportable circumstance. Reportable circumstances includes one or more of the following factors. And this was a very long list, but I pulled a few. A, obvious or suspected homicidal, suicidal, or accidental injury. C, severe unexplained injury. D, occupant or pedestrian motor vehicle injury. F, fire, chemical, electrical, or radiation. Q, any other suspicious factor.
Yeah, so she fits all of those.
She fits half the fucking list. Like, why?
And why wouldn't I know a family is grieving, and that is so horrible, but wouldn't a family push for it?
I wondered about that too, but we've talked about this before, and I kind of think when the authorities are like, this case is closed, like... You're like, okay.
You don't have, like, the bandwidth to fight it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, once I read that list, I was like, it seems so inappropriate that there was no initial autopsy. It's crazy. So Byram tells us that one of the important facts from the autopsy he had done had proved that Kathy had been dead before the fire started. So this evidence was that there was no carbon monoxide in Kathy's lungs.
Oh, okay.
Almaris, not wanting to let go of this, says he asked them if she could have been killed from a blow to the head, and they said yes. Quote, well, if you're ever in a bouncing car, you know where your head is going to hit.
Why is he so obsessed? Why?
Tests done on Kathy's clothes and the carpet in her car both had traces of gasoline, supporting the possibility of arson. Also, several days after the incident, an empty gas can was found 300 yards from the car. But Sheriff Almaris still said, nope. He says in the segment, quote, there's been no proof offered. Nothing in my investigation brought up anything that would have give you any inkling that this might be a homicide rather than a car accident. Nothing. So then the magical UM editing with the opposing views, we cut immediately to Captain Byram.
Love it.
Captain Byram is our kind of guy.
Yep.
He says, quote, there are too many other facts leading me to believe that this was not an accident, and I have to work with facts.
Yes.
We love it. We love it. We love it.
We love it.
So while we have Captain Byram presenting the theory that Kathy's death was a murder, we have absolutely no suspects or motives presented at all in the UM segment.
Yeah.
We can assume this is maybe because the investigation is ongoing. Maybe the authorities want to keep things that only the killer would know out of the public eye. But it's still like really, really strange to me that nothing's presented at all as a theory in the segment.
Right.
So obviously there is so much more to this story because almost nothing is presented in the UM segment.
Seriously.
So thank God for cold case units who know that there's always more to the story.
Love
and
it.
are ready to dive in on cases like this one.
Love it.
Hey.
What state is this in again?
Huh?
What state is this in again?
North
Dakota.
Oh, right.
baby.
North Dakota.
Who knows what goes on out there?
Who knows?
In those Dakotas.
Are there even people in the Dakotas?
I think so. I know one person from one of the Dakotas, and I can't even tell you which one. But I guess there's some people out there.
What's the history behind that? Why are there two different Dakotas? What happened there?
I don't know.
Gosh, I don't know. So I got a lot of this information from an article in the Bismarck Tribune written by Jenny Michael. In 2005, Kathy's case was reopened by the Cold Case Investigations team at the Bureau of Criminal Investigations. So the whole point of forming this team was to reopen cold cases and look at them again now that we have so many developments in DNA and forensic evidence. They looked back over the autopsy report. They reviewed old police reports and witness statements, and they conducted a whole bunch of interviews with friends, family, and the fire department and ambulance personnel. They said that each interview would lead them to 2 more interviews. Oof. So right away, it's like, this has nothing to do with DNA so far, and they are already doing a way more thorough investigation than anyone else has ever done.
Right.
So annoying.
Like, this is all stuff that was there before, or people that we knew about before. Nothing is like because of the advancements of technology.
Right. Totally.
So the autopsy showed that there were injuries to Kathy's neck and throat that would not be consistent with a car accident.
But she hit those railroad tracks and she just slid over.
Yeah,
and then
cue the one guy.
The seatbelt got wrapped around her neck, and then that's just what happened. Obviously.
The other weird part about this to me is that this is still the autopsy that Byram ordered before. They didn't do a new one. So this is information we actually did have. And again, maybe Byram was like, please don't say that. Only the killer would know that.
Right.
But it would have put to bed the accident theory.
100%. Yes.
I'm just getting so mad thinking about the wasted time.
Right.
Even just like viewers who want to actively participate in this having the wrong path to set out on. Like, So this article did say that at the time when they got the autopsy, Kathy's death was ruled a murder. So again, they could have just told us that on UM. They could have just said it's been ruled a murder now that we've done this autopsy.
Yeah.
But according to the BCI, quote, no special science or DNA analysis went into determining who murdered her. Like, after they determined it was murder, they did not take that route. So reminders of just a few other things that we know could have potentially pointed to this being a murder. The fire marshal saying that the fire was started in multiple places inside the car. No damage to the fuel tank or the fuel line. No real evidence showing that the car did veer off the road the way it would in an accident. So now I want to talk about Robert Bonderson. Robert is Kathy's husband, who, again, not named in the segment, not interviewed in the segment. We don't even get to hear his theory of Kathy's death or anything. I also found out via this article that the only interview conducted with Robert after Kathy's death was by the insurance company.
What?
Oh, boy.
What was the sheriff's name again? I'm sorry.
Almaris.
Was he just an idiot?
The worst.
We're going to talk about that.
Okay.
We'll talk about that.
I'm concerned whether or not it was malice or incompetence. Like,
or both.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. Trust me, that's like the end of this whole thing.
I bet Robert Bonderson is like his nephew or something.
Quote, in any homicide case, the spouse is a suspect until proven otherwise, Chief Agent Dallas Carlson said. So the BCI obviously wanted to talk to Robert Bonderson. At some point after Kathy died, Robert moved to Thermopolis, Wyoming. In 1991, Robert remarried to a woman he'd been dating for a while named Nanette Wabema. She also went by Nan. So Robert is in Wyoming when the BCI reaches out to him for interviews because they are reinvestigating this case. Carlson said that they spoke with Bonderson 3 different times on the phone about meeting with him to do an interview, and Bonderson said that he could do that, but he asked the BCI if they could meet in Billings, Montana, which is not where he lives and not where they're investigating from.
Right.
Carlson said that they thought that was weird, but they actually had other business they were doing in Billings anyway, so they ended up agreeing to it. But can you guess what happened next?
He does not come.
He doesn't show up.
Robert did not come to Billings, Montana. He fucking disappeared, and he also left behind his debit and credit cards.
Oh, shit.
So here's some things that the BCI uncovered in their reinvestigation of the case. As we know, Robert had remarried. Though Kathy died in 1987 and he remarried in 1991, the BCI determined that Robert and Nanette's relationship did start in June or July of 1987, which is before Kathy died. The source of this information I did find in a different article to be Robert's brother and sister-in-law.
Oh, wow.
So that came from his side of the family.
Yeah.
In interviews with Nan, she denies this and says they started dating after Kathy's death. So, who knows? One thing we do know, though, is that Robert had taken out a $50,000 life insurance policy on Kathy just a couple months before her death.
Shocking.
So here is the BCI's timeline of events for the dates of October 24th and 25th, 1987. This was all presented in a press conference in 2006. So Jamie Bonderson sneaks out of the house around 8 or 9 p.m., October 24th. Around this same time.
Horny bastard.
Right. You just got to see that 15-year-old girlfriend of yours.
Oh my gosh. Okay, but this is not Jamie's fault. But a few people on the message boards were like, if Jamie had never gone out, and everyone was like, no, this would have happened either way.
Yes.
A different time.
Exactly.
Oh, okay. If it was... Okay. Yeah.
Okay, let me just tell the timeline, and then we'll talk about it.
Karlin's like, can you guys just shut the fuck up for a second?
No, I like the commentary, but yeah, we'll tell the timeline first. So around this same time, I don't know why it's not anywhere, but around this same time, Kathy is allegedly seen at Nan Wabema's apartment building.
Whoa.
I'm sorry. What?
I assume this probably came from witness statements in the interviews that they conducted after, but I'm not sure where that comes from. But the BCI did determine that to be part of the timeline.
Okay.
That night, she was there?
Yes, around this time when Jamie's sneaking out.
What?
And I do want to just add in really quick that Nan did decline to take a polygraph, like when they started reinvestigating this initially. But we'll get back to Nan in a little bit. Okay. So sometime between midnight and 3:30 a.m. on October 25th, Kathy called work to tell them she wasn't coming in the next day. And then here's another detail I'm surprised UM doesn't tell us. Robert and Kathy had another son named Jason who also lived at home and was home that night. He said that he woke up because he heard raised voices that he believed was his parents fighting. Oh. So now... Speaking of info, we're shocked that UM didn't tell us. I mean,
this
info.
Jesus Christ, this is insane.
Here's some info that UM reported that was just completely wrong, but it doesn't seem like that was UM's fault. It seems like somebody lied. So in UM, they tell us about how Jamie was driving home with his girlfriend. Mm-hmm. He's going along in the car. He sees his parents' car passing by them, assumes that his mom is inside, but, quote, can't see the driver in the vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
Not true at all in any way.
Oh my
Jamie did see who was driving the car, and he said that it was his father, Robert Bonderson.
Oh my God! What?
This information is confirmed by Jamie's girlfriend from the time, who was in the car, recalled Jamie saying the words, "There's my dad," and she also wrote a diary entry that said they had seen him in the car.
What? Oh my God.
So somebody lied to UM.
Yep.
Because UM wouldn't just give the actual opposite information.
What the fuck? The argument wasn't about Jamie sneaking out. It was about Nanette.
That's what I think too. So a little before...
My God.
Can you believe? A little before 3:30 a.m., hunters reported seeing headlights in the area of the railroad tracks where Kathy's car was found, and one of the hunters said he heard the fire whistle blowing soon after he returned home. The fire is officially reported at 3:30 a.m., and as we know, Kathy Bonderson's body is found inside on the floorboards of the passenger side of the vehicle. Other details, the car smelled of gas, even though the gas tank and fuel lines were not broken or damaged, and a gas can was found near the scene. Attorney General Wayne Steinahem said, frankly, all of the evidence that led up to the initial conclusion was just inaccurate. So, obviously meaning Almaris's conclusion that this was a total freak accident, she veered off the road. He said that Eddy County Sheriff Almaris, quote, could have done a lot better.
What the hell?
So at this point in the investigation, the BCI determines that most likely Robert killed Kathy at home after the argument while Jamie was out with his friend.
Right. And that was just fortuitous.
Yeah.
Yes. Right. And that's what I mean by on the message boards, they were like, another time that somebody wasn't home. This could have just happened.
And he wasn't worried about no one being home because Jason was home.
Mm-hmm.
So
but Jason was sleeping, but still.
Right, but he just got lucky that Jamie was out that night, and then he could use that as an excuse. That's his alibi right there. That's what we were fighting about.
It's just weird when you've seen the reenactment showing that they were fighting and she was like, I'm going to go look for him. You basically have to let that all go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You have to let the whole segment go, basically.
And I think the only reason that was even in there was probably because Jason knew that there was fighting going on in the house.
And he assumed it was about Jamie sneaking out.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my gosh.
And that's probably like what his dad told him.
Holy shit.
Holy shit.
So they think he kills Kathy at home. He puts her in the car. She is dead on the floorboards of the passenger seat when Robert drives past Jamie in the car.
Oh, my fuck.
He drives her out to the train tracks and sets the car on fire. Quote, based on the evidence gathered by the Bureau of Criminal Investigation and the Eddy County Sheriff's Department, it appears Mr. Bonderson was a primary suspect and responsible for Kathy's death, said Eddy County State's Attorney Travis Peterson. So as we know, Robert Bonderson was supposed to meet with the investigators in Billings, Montana, didn't show up. 2 months later, in Cottonwood Canyon, 50 miles south of Billings, recreational horseback riders discovered the body of Robert Bonderson near his car.
Oh, fuck.
Montana authorities determined he had attempted to asphyxiate himself, failed at it, and then shot himself with a handgun.
Jeez.
Quote, Robert Bonderson played the part of a grieving husband, but not well enough, said Attorney General Steinahem.
Damn.
He tried to cover up the truth, and eventually his lies were unraveled, and that proved to be too much for him to live with.
Wow.
Nan later went to the Thermopolis Sheriff's Department with a suicide note she said she found in the console of Robert's truck. Thermopolis Police Chief Mark Nelson said the note said, quote, I didn't kill my ex-wife, Kathy. And that's it.
Oh, my God. Okay.
Okay.
So Nanette's son and Robert's stepson, Travis Paul, said he didn't believe Robert killed Kathy. He didn't think Robert would ever hurt anyone unless he was defending a family member that was being hurt.
Oh.
He said he'd never even heard his mother and Robert fight in the 12 years they'd been married. Quote, I think it was the pure stress of the 20 years of these people hounding him.
Oh, okay.
Nan initially declined to comment, but did eventually talk with the press. Quote, the man I knew never could have done it, she said. Robert's sister-in-law, Yvonne Bonderson, so she was married to his older brother, Don, said she and Don had been like second parents to Robert, and she and Don could never believe that Robert could have committed the murder. She said that Robert's suicide might appear suspicious to those who didn't know him, but that actually Robert had been prone to suicidal impulses since 1970. So apparently he was in basic training in the Navy, but he couldn't handle it and had a nervous breakdown and washed out of training. So according to her, he had been suicidal since then.
Okay.
But then he also killed his wife, so.
Exactly.
Like, I don't care about his medical history. Come on. Like, there's so much evidence there. What are you doing?
Totally. Nan told the press that 8 years before his death, Robert had attempted suicide before by taking pills and drinking alcohol and jumping in a river. Quote, it was over money and stress, she said. According to her, Robert was obviously upset once he knew Kathy's case was being reopened, and he'd said, they won't be happy until I'm dead. And she said, I think it just got to him. But I said, but let's remember that this was also after Kathy's death, like 8 years before
Right.
he died. But after Kathy's death,
Yes.
murdering your wife in a fit of rage will also maybe make you suicidal.
Yeah.
Right. A little
Yep.
bit.
Yep.
I mean, hopefully it does, right?
So you feel some bit of remorse.
A little bit of karma, a little bit of regret.
So Yvonne, we're still talking Yvonne. Yvonne Bonderson also said Robert taking out the life insurance policy was not suspicious because, quote, he was great for life insurance policies.
He was great for them?
That means he had a lot? What does that mean? He was great?
Like, honey, it was 2 months before she died.
Yeah.
Come on.
I mean, it's like these people have never seen a Dateline episode.
Probably not.
Truly. So again, the authorities don't think that Nan actually knew anything, which I'm willing to believe, but I also think like after the fact, she's just being fucking naive.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Willful
come
ignorance.
on, girl. Jason Bonderson, so the other son that was there that night, he was 33 at the time of this article in 2006, actually did believe the determination made that his father killed his mother. Quote, it's kind of nice that something's been resolved, I guess. I believe it's the truth. So this case is considered closed, but of course, Robert is dead. So is justice really served? I don't know.
Wow.
Like when you go to the message boards and stuff, there's just definitely still unresolved feelings because of that part, I think, because we were
Right.
never able to talk to Robert about it. So while most of the internet thinks that Robert definitely did it, there was actually a fair amount of people that didn't necessarily think that and thought that it wasn't really like proven without a doubt that it was him because the cold case investigative team didn't come up with any like DNA evidence or anything like that.
Sure.
So some people were like, it's all circumstantial still. A lot of people on the message boards really condemn Sheriff Almaris for getting in the way of justice for Kathy. As I watched the segment, I had all the same thoughts as the people on the message boards, so I'm going to share some of it. One other pretty mysterious thing I didn't see addressed on the message boards is why that UM said Jamie couldn't see who was driving in the car. Like, I wanted to find more about that, but...
And then
Right.
is there an update on this segment at all edited
Yeah.
into UM?
Yeah, I just said that, like, it was a really short thing that, like, Robert Bonderson was believed to be
Okay.
the one or something.
So I also was mistaken. So Jamie only saw one car. He didn't see his mother in a car with a car close behind her.
In the description of UM, that's what they said Jamie
Okay.
saw. They said that they saw another car following closely behind. And
Right.
that he couldn't see anyone in either car. I think they were trying to present a theory that, like, some creepy person was following
right.
her.
Right. Okay.
But,
So it was just
I
one
think it was
car.
just totally unrelated.
And it ended up being Robert in the car.
yeah.
Most likely with her already on the floor.
But then Kathy was also at Nanette's house that night as well.
earlier that
Yeah,
night.
but earlier at, like, 8 or 9 p.m.
Shit.
Yeah. So she like confronted or found
Right. And then
them or
Nanette was
something.
like, he couldn't have possibly done it. She just happened to die the same night that she showed up at my house to confront me.
Yeah, and unfortunately,
Really?
that was the one thing I couldn't find more on, but that was in, like, the Bureau of Criminal Investigation's, like, timeline of events.
Give me
so.
a break. Wow.
So yeah, just the thing with Jamie saying he couldn't see it, I was like, did he lie? Did his dad ask him to lie?
Yes.
Right.
Was something like convoluted in the telling of the story? I
Right.
just don't get it. The next thing I just wanted to discuss is just how this case could have been solved so much earlier.
I know.
Why was Sheriff Almaris so stuck to his guns about this being an accident?
Right.
A lot of people wonder if Almaris and Bonderson were friends.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you said, or maybe like related. They're not related. And I don't know the answer to that, but I do think it's possible they could have known each other.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know how big this town was, but it wasn't.
It can't be
big
that big. It's North
city.
Dakota.
Yes. And, you know, maybe they weren't friends, but maybe they just knew each other. I also think Almaris just, like, did not want to believe this type of crime could happen in
Maybe.
his town. But I mostly lean towards the fact that this was, like, a big-time case in a small town with a small-town
Yeah.
sheriff's department.
And he did not want anyone else involved.
I lean more towards just total lack of experience. I think towns like this don't see these kinds of crimes, and they just have less experience investigating them.
And you don't want to believe that there was a murder.
Exactly. And I think, like you said, there's just a weird pride thing here.
Yeah.
He shows a lack of humility, too.
Right.
He's like, not willing to see any other side.
No. And he's like,
and we
you
have
big
seen
city.
that before.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, you big city jerks don't get to come in here and tell me how to do my job, kind of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He made his determination early and quickly, and I think he was just hoping to get the case solved for the community and be this hero. So, yeah, I think that Almaris just made his quick judgment on what happened based on, like, very little knowledge of this type of crime. He didn't want the, quote, big guns coming in and telling him his investigation was shitty. Someone pointed out on the message boards, I think he even says the words, my case, in the segment. Like, come on. Like, that's not what this is about.
Nope.
Yeah. But it is if you're the sheriff of a tiny town and you're a total megalomaniac, then it is, right? It belongs to you.
Gross.
And you get to decide, and no one else can touch it.
Yeah, even if it was good intentions maybe to begin with, like, absolute negligence. If you're just ignoring all these things, it's just, like, unacceptable.
Alternative facts.
Yeah. So on the message boards, people think that Almaris probably wasn't, like, helping cover something up.
No.
But his pride just went over on doing a proper investigation. So there was a couple comments that I pulled that I liked. Dallas Texan said, from an American law enforcement perspective, I absolutely can't get enough of this segment. It really shows the diversity in our country and the ability to solve crime that otherwise would not be possible without checks and balances. I mean this in the most sincere manner. God bless that sheriff for doing his best, and thank the Lord for Big Brother State Trooper stepping in. And then John said, Almaris took a very narrow, obstinate view and was the reason for the delay in getting the truth in this case. Byram thankfully knew he was right and refused to be stonewalled. Good for him.
Yeah.
And Dallas Texan said, not to make light of Kathy's murder, which was callous, I'm glad the truth has finally been told. But regarding our legal system, that segment just gets me in the American spirit every time I watch it. The quest for real science versus personal pride and the everlasting thirst for respective positional power. I feel like I need to write a term paper now. And I was just like, that's really interesting because we do see that. We see these little small town sheriffs and whatnot, like just not doing real investigations and wanting to stick to their guns. It's horrible. And then the last comment I wanted to include was, of course, from Robin Warder.
Robin!
Because he just hit the nail on the head for me as what I was thinking as I watched this case. He said, I always love to compare this segment to the Aileen Conway case.
Yes.
In that one, her death is ruled an accident, but the husband fights diligently to get the case reopened and is a very active participant in the UM segment. In this one, the husband pretty much just slinks into the background and is a complete non-factor in the UM segment because he's obviously hoping the original accident ruling will stick.
Yeah.
And I was like, yep. I thought about Aileen Conway too because it's just
so different the way they're
total
handled.
opposite.
Yep.
That poor son, like, did he ever have to confront his dad and say, I saw you driving the car?
Yeah.
That's what I'm wondering. Like, he must have either told him to lie or said, you cannot talk to anyone. You just cannot talk to the authorities. You can't talk to UM.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, he definitely lied, but it's what was the motivating factor? Did he lie to protect his father, or did his father ask him to lie?
Right.
And
or I was like, would he even be able to say, like, Jamie's too young to talk to you?
No.
This is what Jamie told me.
Listen,
is that possible?
If you're old enough to sneak out of the house, you're old enough to talk to the cops. So I think that Jamie put two and two together and just on his own decided not to say that he saw his dad or that his dad asked him to.
Jesus. And I'm sure if it really happened, nothing happened the way the reenactments show, but there weren't a lot of other cars on the road in the middle of the night. So I bet Robert did see his son's car on the side of the road as they passed. Yes.
Imagine that moment, Robert driving past Jamie and being like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
What are the chances?
And wouldn't Jamie then have gotten home and seen no one was home?
Right.
Like,
I don't have a sibling, but if I just saw my dad driving past me at 2 o'clock in the morning and I get home and I don't see my mom, I would wake up my sibling and be like, hey, I snuck out. I'm super sorry. Like, how?
For sure.
There's a lot.
And I think that also must be why Jason is like, it was my dad.
Yeah.
Because he knows that stuff happened.
Right. And, like, there were so many conversations that probably happened that we'll never know about
Right.
Wow.
And you'd also probably be scared of your dad at that point if you knew that he did that. And
Well, it's so wild, too, because when I was watching the segment, the minute that he was like, oh, we got into an argument and she left on her own, I instantly was like, I just assumed it was going to be like, and he killed her, like the end, you know, like in the segment. And it went in this like crazy haywire direction because of that sheriff. And I was like, what is happening? Like, obviously, the minute a spouse is like, we got into a fight and
Right.
she took off.
I almost took that as like trying to prove more that it wasn't him because he's like admitting like, yeah, we got in a big fight.
Right.
Like, you know.
Yeah, but I think a lot of them do that to be like, listen, I'm going to be honest. We got into a fight. But then she took off.
Yeah, she left. She didn't want to be with me, so I definitely wasn't there when she died.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like, God, all the time wasted, like all the resources and the manpower, and because of that story of her driving by in the car and a car following closely behind her.
God.
Yeah. Just like total bullshit. Like,
Right.
why?
Right.
It's so frustrating.
And then it is true. Like, I think there are examples of people who have been accused of something for decades that, you know, it obviously causes a lot of stress. And I do think that we've heard of a couple instances where the people did take their own lives and in the end, they didn't commit the crime. So I can see.
Right.
But all of the evidence proves otherwise. Like, all of the evidence is he did this.
Absolutely. Because as I started looking through the message boards and saw how many people, and given most of these were many more years ago.
Right.
That people were like, well, maybe this, and I don't know. Like,
Right.
do we really know? But to me, it all came back to the timeline.
Right.
Like, who else could have possibly, how,
And again,
there's no other way it could have gone down when you really look at the timeline of events.
absolutely. And again, this is a small town. If there were people in there that were tailing women in cars, someone would have reported it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that was
Totally.
Twisty Turny.
Yeah, good job.
Good job, babe. That was awesome.
Okay, so next week, come back for part 2 of episode 24, and I have a robbery case about the Vallejo armored car murders.
And then I have an amnesia segment about Sarah De Janeiro.
Alrighty.
We'll see you then. We love.
We love you so.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
To see photos we reference in the episode, follow us on Instagram at Resolve Mysteries Podcast and on Facebook and Twitter at Resolve the Pod. You can contact us at resolvemysteriespodcast.com, resolvemysteriespodcast@gmail.com, or at our P.O. Box, 14005, Portland, Oregon, 97293. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you like us, leave a 5-star review and tell a friend, or tell 2, or tell 3. Don't forget, for every review we receive, we donate $1 to a different nonprofit.
Make sure that shit is tight.
Toy.
That's my way of testing. Yeah? Okay, we're good.
Toy.
Toy on 3.
Toy on.
Toy claps on 3.
Karlin, I can't see you. Is that you?
Oh,
or
I'm
me?
sorry. It's me. I'm
Come
like
on.
really multitasking right now.
Oh, boy.
Okay, all right, well, pay attention.
Let it go for now. We can
Let it go, Elsa.
Okay, who's clapping?
Allison's
I
doing the
am.
intro.
I'm doing the intro. 1, 2, 3. God, this fucking limp dick microphone. It's like, do you see it? It's the most
She's
flaccid.
got a flaccid mic.
Honey, I'm sorry.
My
that
mic
sucks.
needs a little Viagra. Hey, buddy, come on up.
Ew.
Buddy.
You want me to fluff you? Okay. Hello,
buddy.
listeners.
Oh, hey, buddies.
Hey, buddies.
Hey, buddies.